Hello, my name is Bill Jansens and this is my presentation for Assessment 2 for Emotional Intelligence for Leaders. As the poet William Blake once said, hindsight is a wonderful thing. And looking back on a particular incident that occurred for me with a colleague some years ago, I can clearly see how my use of emotional intelligence could have been much better in that instance, but I also know that I learned something that day that provided me with guidance on how to be, which stays with me to this day. Self-reflection starts with being able to describe an event, so let me tell you what happened. For some background, I'm a nurse practitioner. I work in a cancer care centre on the south coast of New South Wales. Within our group of senior cancer nurses, we set out to review the roles of cancer nurse coordinators within our service. You've probably heard of McGrath breast care nurses. Well, we've got care coordinators that support all people with cancer. So if a person's diagnosed with cancer, the care coordinators are their go-to person, their main contact within our service, and it's their job to help support the patients through a very stressful time in their life, make sure things run smoothly, support the nurses that are treating them, make sure all arrangements are made, and be that fallback person, that safety net for those patients. And those cancer nurses will be senior cancer nurses like clinical nurse consultants and clinical nurse specialists. But over time, there's been a growing sense of frustration within this group of nurses, that they're often asked to do jobs that they feel others really should do, or they end up doing them because others either haven't done them properly or haven't done them very well. The irony is, because they're so capable, others often bypass the usual pathways and go straight to them, which means they end up picking up extra tasks that really aren't part of their role. So, we wanted to gain an understanding from our colleagues within the centre about what they thought the role of the care coordinator was, so that we could help improve their understanding and reduce the frustrations that the care coordinators felt. To address this, our team, led by Alice, one of the clinical nurse consultants, started a project which started with a survey for all the staff within the centre asking what they thought. But the project lost momentum and Alice seemed less engaged, and I felt really annoyed and frustrated by this, that the project hadn't progressed. We'd invested a lot of time, a lot of work in creating the survey, analysing the results, developing the action plan from themes, and I felt it really showed disrespect to all of those within our service that had taken time to complete the survey and let us know what they thought. We held a meeting to discuss the project, and I jumped in immediately and raised my frustrations and asked Alice why she'd lost interest, what was the problem. She looked at me and broke down in tears and told us she recognised this had happened and apologised that she had let us all down. But then she went on to explain why. That she had had two major life events occur in the previous 12 months. Her brother had died unexpectedly overseas, and then she had an accident where she actually shut her 10-year-old daughter's finger in a car door, which led to her having a partial amputation. So terrible events. So really, as you can imagine, I felt awful. I've been so focused on my frustrations, how I felt, that I completely failed to consider anything else. What Alice was feeling, why she'd lost interest in the project, and what she might have been going through. I apologised profusely for my thoughtlessness and for upsetting her. She was amazingly understanding. I'm not sure whether that made me feel better or worse, contrasting my lack of empathy with her sincere, heartfelt response. My motivation had been positive. I wanted the project to succeed for the sake of the care coordinators and for our patients, but passion without consideration can come across as criticism. If I'd channeled my motivation more effectively, that situation would have been entirely different, and I wouldn't have upset Alice so much. For me, that contrast between my lack of emotional empathy and Alice's compassionate response was a moment of real learning. I generally consider myself a thoughtful, caring person, but looking back, it was an absence of that in that situation which sits with me today as a reminder of how to be aware and how to do things differently. If I had stopped to consider why Alice was less engaged before making my criticisms, I might have realised that something personal was affecting her. Alice, however, demonstrated empathy in her response to me. Despite her pain, she showed kindness and understanding. There was a positive element to how bad I felt though, as this episode still sticks with me today, which is why I've used it for this presentation. It has continued to inform how I talk to and teach and work with all the nursing staff and medical staff I work with today. And it's a constant reminder for me to remember how my thoughtlessness on that occasion affected someone, and equally how their response showed me how to be understanding and demonstrate compassion for another situation. I continue to use the lesson to guide my work within our centre, how I work and help my colleagues, how I teach all of our new nurses interacting with people who are going through, as I said, one of the most stressful periods of their life. Seeing situations using the pillars of emotional intelligence to do this, encouraging self-awareness, that ability to recognise our own emotions and their impact on others. At that meeting, my self-awareness was low. I knew I was frustrated, but I didn't pause to reflect on how my frustration might come across to Alice. In hindsight, I should have recognised where my emotions sat and asked myself, well, what's driving this, Bill? And what effect might you expressing it have on the team? That simple recognition would have changed the way I spoke. Those first few seconds of self-regulation to allow assessment and consideration of a situation, the importance of managing impulses and maintaining emotional control, allowing others to express how they feel about a subject rather than wading in with my inconsiderate perspectives. Rather than expressing disappointment and negative judgment, I could have asked Alice how she thought things were going. Then, utilising that simple 6-second rule, taking a deep breath, not letting my amygdala run my brain, I could have shown some self-regulation. To state the bleeding obvious, my jumping straight in with thoughtless criticism did not demonstrate good social skills, but that experience has sharpened my awareness that leadership requires careful relationship management. By communicating with empathy, listening actively and framing concerns in a constructive way, I've learned to build stronger collaborations to this day. When I pull it all together, the lesson is clear. Emotional intelligence is essential in healthcare leadership. By developing self-awareness, I've learned to catch my emotional triggers earlier. By practicing self-regulation, I avoid letting frustration dictate my words. By channeling my motivation in the right way, I can energise projects rather than dampening them. By showing empathy, I can connect with colleagues at a human level. And by building stronger social skills, I can and do create a culture of trust and respect for me and all those around me. As a leader in our service, I know that developing my emotional intelligence strengthens not just me, but also helps all those I work with. And through doing this, we create a healthier, more supportive workplace. And ultimately, when we do that, we improve the care and outcomes for the people we serve. This episode with Alice taught me that self-awareness and self-regulation are not passive traits, but active skills which I have to deliberately apply, especially in moments of frustration. Alice's empathy in response to my criticism highlighted the importance of compassion in leadership. By practicing emotional intelligence, pausing before reacting, considering others' perspectives and fostering understanding, I know by doing all of that I help to create a healthier workplace culture. The second part of William Blake's quote is rarely remembered. So he starts with hindsight is a wonderful thing, but goes on to say, but foresight is even better. And that is the mantra of emotional intelligence. Think before you speak, think again, consider the effect your words and actions will have on those around you before you commit to them. Through that, be kind and be thoughtful. Thank you for listening.